Let's freaking go. The biggest head coaching vacancy in years has been opened and shut by KALEN DeBOER. He will be the one, barring some magical change of events. He's the next head coach at Alabama, and this was a fantastic hire by the Alabama Crimson Tide. And you're going to hear this nonstop. Well, what about recruiting? What about not being from the Southeastern Conference? What about the step up from going to the Pac-12 to where he is now, the grinder of all grinders in the SEC? The simple truth is this: the guy flat out wins. He flat out knows how to coach. And the fact that he took this Washington team to the national championship game was nothing short of incredible. Now, if I were an Alabama fan, this is where I would be concerned. More than likely, Ryan Grubb, the offensive coach of the Huskies, the coordinator, will probably be the head coach of the Washington Huskies moving forward. So that's going to be the biggest hire for DeBoer, unless he is the one that wants to call the plays. You could make a case that Ryan Grubb was underrated with what he did at Washington, but I do think this is a really good hire. I have always been impressed with how KALEN DeBoer has went about play calling and misdirection and all of that. Now, would he have been my number one guy? No, my number one guy would have been Mike Norvell. And Mike Norvell, of course, is staying at Florida State. And it was reported earlier today that Alabama did make a really strong push for Mike Norvell. So we'll see what happens there. But the truth here is KALEN DeBoer is a great hire for Alabama, and one that concerns me as an LSU fan, as someone that runs an LSU community, as we see some of those people from my LSU community. Cliff's here, Skipper, Van, AP's here as well. Now, is this a radical move? Maybe, but one thing I would point out is this job opening wasn't as attractive as many people thought it would have been, right? Steve Sarkisian stayed at Texas. Mike Norvell stayed at Alabama. Would Dan Lanning make the move to Alabama? He decides to stay at Oregon. So at this point, we don't know what's going to happen with Alabama and the rest of their coaching staff, but I don't feel this was the number one option for Alabama, but oftentimes your number one option doesn't come through. So this is a major win for Alabama. I do like the hire. But we go to Rustin. As a Tennessee fan, I love the hire. So I understand that my YouTube channel, our main contributors, if you will, outside of LSU, of course, is Alabama. Well, I say Alabama. It's actually Arkansas and Tennessee. So I really do appreciate the Razorbacks and volunteers in particular for helping grow this channel. It led me to a very interesting interview yesterday with someone very powerful, which was really cool. But it shows two fan bases that have really pushed the Power Hour SEC channel, of course, with my LSU community. So, Rustin, let me know, are you saying this – are you concerned about this hire from a Tennessee perspective, or are you saying this, hey, as a Tennessee fan, I like the fact that they hired KALEN DeBoer because you think he's not going to be that great? The simple truth is also this: I am not so certain that Alabama is going to miss Nick Saban as the coach so much as Nick Saban as the legend, if that makes sense. As far as a down-to-down, day-to-day coach, Nick Saban is still elite. I have made it very clear that this last year's team wasn't really that great, and he took them to the playoff and was up by 7 in the final minutes versus the eventual national champion. He is still a really good coach, but where you're going to miss Nick Saban is in recruiting, right? You're going to miss him being the legend because you're so used to recruits going to Alabama just to be at Alabama. Recruits will take less of an NIL deal to go to Alabama. Recruits will take a more crowded position group just to go to Alabama. Are they still going to do the same thing when Nick Saban is gone? No. So no matter what happens, maybe KALEN DeBOER is in a position where he can't really succeed because he's following the legend. And it was Nick Saban who propped this Alabama program up and not KALEN DeBOER, right? So we'll see what happens. It's been a very interesting coaching cycle in the SEC. So there you go. Let's go to Rustin here. He follows up. I think he's a good coach, but I was way more concerned they were going to get Lane Kiffin. Yeah, Lane would have been a great hire for them. Or Mike Vrabel. Yeah, I mean, I think Vrabel wants to stay in the NFL, but he doesn't have a job, so I think he would have taken it. Or really any other candidates that were on the table. They were way scarier. So let's go to Chase here, who says, I don't mind the hire. He's a good coach. I don't know if he's great, so we'll see. Now, AP and Cliff pretty much say the same thing. The job will be 10 times more attractive the next hire. If he wins 10 games, Alabama would want to fire him. Yeah, I mean, the expectations are going to be really sky high. So, this is also going to be the ultimate test of whether Alabama is actually the best job in college football or one of the best jobs in college football. Obviously, it's a top 10 job, but is it the top job? If KALEN DeBoer succeeds, is without reasonable doubt that they are a top 2 or 3 job. But if he fails, there are other jobs that are easier than this job. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything else unfolds with the staff. I will also say, just to add on to the Alabama coaching staff, one thing that is very fascinating is how many coaching staffs have been picked apart recently. There are so many staffs that are rebuilding their staff, and Alabama's a little bit behind the 8 ball on what they want to do at OC and what they want to do at DC, right? LSU has had a lot of change at the OC and DC position and in their coaching staff, which is, of course, a big team Alabama will play next season. Auburn, one of the biggest stories in the SEC is the fact that Auburn is losing everyone. They fire the OC. Cadillac Williams, who remembers Cadillac Williams? He's a running back coach. Well, he decides to resign. Alabama loses a defensive back coach. He's gone. What's going on the Plains? So there's been a lot of coordinator transition over the past 48 to 72 hours. So Alabama's not the only team that's needing to rebuild their staff. And obviously, it's not as big of a deal for Auburn to get go get an OC because, well, he's going to call the plays next year, Hugh Freeze. KALEN DeBoer, I think the big question is going to be, is he going to call the plays? Okay. Or will it be, let's just say Washington decides to not go with Ryan Grubb. I think that they will. Will Ryan Grubb go with him to Tuscaloosa? Does Alabama want to retain Tommy Rees? Is Tommy Rees a play caller that would fit the style of KALEN DeBoer? We'll see. Obviously, the two were very close to meeting in the playoff. I don't know. So I mainly just got on here to go for a little bit. I thought I was only going to have like 2 people in here. There's a few over 30 in here. That's obviously really cool. If you guys have any questions, feel free to fire them in. And guess what? It could be about anything SEC related. I don't mind talking Tennessee football and their offseason up to this point. I feel Tennessee is in a really good spot moving forward. obviously the first thing is Nico getting that bowl game under his belt. I felt as if that game was okay, not spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. It's a really good thing for them. I feel Arkansas is in a decent spot. Obviously, with their OC and DC pretty much locked in here, will they take a step forward next year in what should be a gauntlet of a schedule? So if you guys have any other SEC related questions, let me know, but I am going to mostly focus on Alabama. Let's go to Kenneth right here. This is a decent hire, just not sure if it's going to move the needle immediately. However, if he has success, it could turn out to be the best thing for Alabama. I think you mean best thing in terms of his own ceiling, right? Because I don't think anyone's going to do what Nick Saban has done. Okay. Obviously, Kirby Smart is close. He's heading in that trajectory. But, man, I don't know if DeBoer will reach those heights. One thing that he's going to need to do, though, is convince Isaiah Bond to come back. Because right now, Alabama's wide receiver room looks roof. Okay. Ramel Keaton would be the best wide receiver on Alabama's team. Kyron Lacey would be the best wide receiver on Alabama's team. So other people's wide receivers 2 and 3 would be the best receiver on Alabama's team right now if Isaiah Bond doesn't come back. Because obviously he has a really good rapport with Jalen Milroe. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. Lance Hurd, you're hearing that he's going to Tennessee. I've heard the same. I don't know if he's committed or not, but I know Lance. Obviously, he's going to be a big-time SEC offensive tackle, and best of luck to him because we don't play him next year. So there you go. But Tennessee desperately needs offensive tackle help based on that position group being probably the worst position group on the offense last season. Did a lot of your film studies. Maybe you disagree with that, but Tennessee offensive tackle group was horrible. Now, back to DeBoer. It's very interesting that Danny Girl brings up the next topic here. It's not official yet. Until Alabama tweets out a graphic, it's not official. So can it backfire? Could Kalen say, "Yeah, I'm backing out of this"? Maybe. I will say this. Ross Dellinger reported that Washington officials have activated a search over the last couple of days. So it feels as if Washington was feeling this was the direction it was going or potentially could be going. Okay. And it's just going to be interesting if they actually go with Ryan Grubb as their next head coach. Let's see. Washington officials spent more than 2 months in discussions with representatives for DeBoer on a new contract. The last offer for KALEN DeBoer was $9+ million a year for 7 years. Okay, at Washington. So at Alabama, I would guess he's going to get $10 million. That seems to be the standard. That's what that's what Mike Norvell has. That's what Brian Kelly has. And I think that's going to be where he's going to be. Obviously, it'll be very incentive-based because Alabama will do they'll do everything to get back at the top of college football, especially in this first year. This first year is going to be very critical for them. Just because if he does struggle, there are going to be so many meltdown Alabama moments from fans and the like. Also, KALEN DeBoer is not an Alabamian, right? He's not one of them, all right? He's not SEC. He's got this Pac-12 lower division brand to him. But when a head coach wins 11 games in 7 out of the last 11 seasons. 11. Okay, now think about that. 11. How many college football games are played during the season? Well, depending on the level, there's playoffs, obviously, at some levels and whatnot, but no more than 15, right? It's normally around that number. That many 11-win seasons? Do you know how difficult that is? Kind of sounds like the guy that he's replacing. So it then begs the question, what if Alabama does lose? What if they are a 3 or 4 loss team next season? That's something DeBoer's not really familiar with. He lost 3 total games in 2 seasons at Washington, and one of those was a national championship game. So how would he deal with adversity? Obviously, Alabama's not lost more than 2 games in well over a decade. It is just ridiculous how dominant Nick Saban has been. But the truth is, you've got to build a staff. You've got to get some ace recruiters on the staff. All right. That's going to be the biggest or the first order of business, right? Just because I know LSU the best, when Brian Kelly was hired, the big story was, well, Brian Kelly can't recruit. That was always a big thing. He's not a big recruiter, and he's not going to work in the SEC. Well, that narrative has died down over the past couple of seasons because LSU has still put together top 10, top 5 level classes, just depending on whichever service you look at. But what helped diffuse that narrative more than anything else was they went and got Frank Wilson. Okay, and for those that aren't familiar, Frank Wilson is one of the best recruiters in college football history, in the entire sport, what he's done at LSU. So they hired him back and paid him a lot of money to come back. And guess what? The recruiting has been elite at LSU, absolutely elite. And they are, for 2025, outkicking their expectations, even for LSU standards. So for Alabama to stay in that top 5 region, which they are every year under Nick Saban, who is that ace recruiter? Who is that guy? Maybe it's kind of like Williams, okay? Maybe it is kind of like Williams, who was just let go, or I say let go. He parted ways with Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Now, would kind of like Williams do such a thing? We're talking about an Auburn running back legend, okay? Would he do such a thing? After being a head coach at Auburn, being an assistant coach at Auburn, if you pay him enough, he'll do it. Okay? I think he would. Ultimately, we all see green. If you're a Tennessee fan watching this and KALEN DeBOER walked up to Rustin and said, hey, I want you to be a part of my staff. I'm going to give you $350K a year to coach the running backs. I don't know what you do, Rustin Crane, but you're probably taking it. Okay. Joshua says there won't be another dynasty like Nick Saban's. Strong disagreement. Okay. Strong disagreement for this reason. Kirby Smart. All right. Who is the one person? Answer this for me. All right. Now, who is the one person that has stopped Kirby Smart over the past couple of seasons? It's Nick Saban. Okay. It's Nick Saban. That's all I got. Kirby Smart beat a team in a national championship game 65-7. And follow that up with the 63-3 this past season. His only game he's lost over the past 3 seasons is against Nick Saban by 3 measly points. Danny, thank you so much for your support. And yeah, let's give something out. I don't know if I have any Alabama cards to give out. I'll give out a Tennessee card or an LSU card here in a second if we get to 50 in super chats. I got some Peyton Manning cards here So if you're a Tennessee fan, I'll give out a Peyton card if we get 250 in donations. Would Bama be better served to hire a bridge coach and go with Reese? Knowing Saban is remaining on campus, how does a big fish coach in both the literal and figurative shadow of the GOAT? Yeah, that's probably not that bad of a move, right? If you were to say, hey, this was kind of sudden, we weren't really expecting it. Nick Saban, of course, just decided to retire. Greg Byrne was, seeing Nick Saban interview assistant coaches, and they probably had prior talks of when the end was actually going to be. And Nick Saban has publicly said he couldn't, commit to anyone saying, I'm going to be here 3, 4, 5 years to see your son through or whatever. So there's probably been prior talks, but it was kind of sudden. Would it have been better to say, hey, Nick, can you stay as an advisor role and let's give Tommy Reese a job so we can retain our roster and so on and so on. I'm guessing Nick Saban is still going to be involved with the program, still going to be in Tuscaloosa, still going to have his own office somewhere in that building. But, I also think Saban wants to ride off to the sunset. It doesn't seem his ego to just hang around, right? Something else I give Nick a lot of credit, and it could just be that he doesn't have an in-house assistant that he for sure would have wanted to have that job. But you do see other coaches that have retired recently where the team hired one of their people, okay? Bill Belichick gets fired. Well, Patriots hire Belichick's guy, Gerard Mayo. And it was written in Mayo's contract that he would take over for Belichick whenever he was done. So it might be that Robert Kraft was beholden to that. But they hired an in-house guy. Same thing happened with Duke, right? Legendary coach, Coach K retires. John Shire takes over. We'll see what John Shire can do. But the fact that Nick didn't pressure Alabama to just go after someone, and maybe he did and we don't know, was very interesting. And I don't know if Nick knows KALEN DeBOER at all. It wouldn't shock me if he did, but it wouldn't shock me if he didn't. So Danny follows up here. As a big fish, do you want him to be on campus and still there? I don't think so. I think that is why this has been so hard to get a coach to take it. Yeah, but I also think, Danny, this is one of the rare instances where the opposite of this is probably true. Okay, so let's say KALEN DeBOER, for instance. It is known that Alabama is able to get the Nick Saban discount from players, right? Because they want to be a part of Alabama football. Nick Saban, of course, has this crazy NFL track record, and you're going to get coached by the best. So DeBoer comes in and not really familiar with Alabama at all. I think Nick being around in this instance is very important just because of the scale of how big a college football job actually is. And this is one thing that I've always held true about college football head coaches at the Division I Power 5 level. It is the most extensive, grinding, grueling head coaching job that we have in all of sports. There is so much ass kissing, well, maybe both of those, that you have to do to be a head coach at a Division I Power 5 school. You got all these boosters. You're the face of the university. You got a gazillion press conferences, radio appearances, media stuff. You got 1,000 things to do when it comes to recruiting. You got NIL, you got the portal and all that. And then you have your actual game managing and actual coaching. I do think this is an instance, like for reference, if I'm taking over for a legendary college basketball coach, I don't want him anywhere near the program. I don't. But for a football program, it is a little bit different because there is just so much stuff. But then you also get your point. There's just so much more pressure with him just overlooking things, right? Let's say hi to Carl. What's up, Carl? Good to see you. Oh, okay. Huge buyout clause. I'm sure he's got one of those making this switch from Washington to Alabama. Let's go to Ruston. I've met Philip Fulmer before. We had to deal with that with Tennessee and Fulmer. It's awkward and no good for anybody. Best to ride off to the sunset with dignity. That is true. I mean, for those that aren't familiar, and Ruston, correct me if I'm wrong on this. So Philip Fulmer retired, and then he became the AD. All right. And there was so much pressure on getting back to the Fulmer days and how exciting that was. And you had Peyton Manning and T. Martin and Peerless Price. Obviously Jason Witten was a little after that era, but still it was crazy. The Tennessee football, went through that stretch. And a lot of it, people felt like it was Philip Fulmer just being there, because he was such a great coach. But I do think it's a little bit different because Fulmer was the actual AD. And I honestly think Nick is just, I don't know. It just seems like Nick was really burned out. Okay. Is it official he's keeping an office? I think he referenced that in the interview with Reese Davis. Saban has an office to film his Aflac commercials. Him and Dion. He just needs a little podcast studio. And he stuck around practices. Very interesting. I didn't know that. I could see that not working with Lane Kiffin. I could. Okay. Now, next thing I want to get into. NIL. All right. So we talked about the Nick Saban NIL and all that stuff. I do want to bring up that Charlie Baker, the new NCAA president. So they had the thing happen with Florida State. I don't want to get into all of that. But there's a story out that college athletes will just be receiving a salary, right? And it's kind of what's already happening, but the schools would just directly pay the athletes. Okay. I don't know how I feel about that. There's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo that goes along with it. Giving them employment status, no CBAs or anything like that. And I think the best thing for Nick Saban to do, and it seems like he's very passionate about this aspect of his life, the next thing he's going to do is become that person who oversees college football. I don't think anyone would disagree with Nick Saban becoming an advisor of sorts when it comes to the future of college football. Now, of course, him doing that would not be good for those that think everything is rigged for the SEC, but I would be open to some authoritative person taking over college football, even if I don't see eye to eye with him on everything. Okay. So yes, in the interview, I'm going to stay in Tuscaloosa. They're giving me an office in the stadium. I said, I can't get on your butt from there just like I can from the field. I could get on your butt from there just like I can from the field. Let's go to Danny Girl. So the boosters pay the school and the school pays the athletes. How is that name, image, and likeness? NIL was meant to be used for marketing purposes. How does that happen when it's a full team? So it's not going to be NIL anymore. That's what Baker is trying to do. He's just trying to kill the facade. At least that's how I understand it. Let's go to Jeffrey. He says he thinks KALEN DeBOER will be a good coach. Will be a good coach. Recruiter, not so sure. Alabama will still be good. Yeah, I think the big domino here, Jeffrey, is Milroe. Okay. What if Milroe wants to enter the transfer portal? He's not really all that close to Michael Penix in terms of style. Like, one is a true dual threat playmaker who throws very erratically in big games. And the other is Jalen Milroe. I'm kidding. Not so much. Jaden for Heisman till the end of time. I will never hear out a debate like that again. But no, Milroe's not nearly as talented of a thrower, and we saw that obviously versus Michigan. We saw that throughout the course of the season. Elite deep ball thrower when he actually chunked it. Ironically, his deep ball was terrible versus LSU, but that's not here nor there. And he is, now that Jaden is going to the NFL, the best runner in all of college football. Okay. DeBoer's offense is heavily predicated on accuracy, throwing the ball when it needs to be thrown. Lots of misdirection. So obviously, Milroe can succeed in that environment with, some new coaching and a new environment. But maybe if Tommy Rees isn't retained, Jalen Milroe goes on the market and he's in the portal. Even though he's already said publicly he's coming back. He said he's running it back. He was on with Jim Dunaway at the Next Round live show. Okay. Will Rogers, what does he do? Let's see here. Always check down midstream, making sure not forgetting anything. Yeah, Lansert is going to play tackle no matter where he goes. I doubt he will ever play guard. Now, could he play guard? Yeah, he could. But wherever he's going to want assurances that he's going to play tackle, in particular left tackle. Yeah, so does Will Rogers follow him, or can he follow him? Has he already signed his paperwork with Washington? Rustin, I appreciate you. We'll see you on the next Tennessee video, which should come in the next week or so. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to Will Rogers. I really, really, really don't. What I would tell you, though, is will he have a market? Is he better served just being the transition piece at Washington, especially if Ryan Grubb is hired as a Washington head coach? Yeah, I do know that Washington has a team meeting being called right now, and it's probably going to feel a lot like the Marcus Freeman situation where they just hire the young hotshot coach to be the head coach. We'll see. So he can still transfer after the coach leaves. That's good. That's good. Now, here's what we're going to do. I was only going to go live for a little bit, but you guys cranked it up. Appreciate Danny with the super. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. If you do super chat, we'll keep going all afternoon. I don't mind. I don't really have a whole lot going on. I was just waiting, just like you, for the Alabama rumor to drop. Actually, I do have a lot going on. Doing some adulting today. I've gotten to the point where I get my hair cut every Friday. And I don't know. I don't need a haircut, but I love getting it cut, if that makes sense. Also, this was crazy. Jeff Lebby's better than KALEN DeBOER? Chillax, are you serious? You think someone that's never been a head coach is better than the guy who took Washington to a national championship? Chillaxing. You're not chillaxing. You're on a different level right now. You're the opposite of chillaxing. I mean, you're Chris Rock on Bring the Pain. You are doing the most. Jeff Lebby is better than KALEN DeBOER? Oh, Danny girl, don't hate. Don't hate. Don't hate. Because tell me this. What is one thing that a darling man like myself could have done that gave her as big of a smile as I gave her? Get a shirt with her face on it. Don't hate. If y'all want to see what she's talking about, go to my Twitter at Carter the Power. Okay, Danny says the dishes. Well, Danny, I'm going to text your husband, and I'm going to say, hey, I don't remember your name, but here's a link to get a shirt with Danny Girl's face on it. Just include the one with the PHL shirt. Don't get on me. Don't get on me with my t-shirt purchases. Because I mean business when it comes down to style. I'm going to wear the Hey shirt on Sunday night's live stream, so you better tune in. And we'll be live on the LSU channel. Now, SEC kinfolk, we are building. We're starting, potentially starting an NFL channel pretty soon. Working on that with my graphics department. My wonderful German friend named Annie. She's cutting up some pretty cool stuff for us. And I kind of want to start the NFL channel because I love the National Football League. I also, tell me this. Can I get an honest opinion from you in the chat before I skedaddle? We've got not one, but we've got two. Okay, you see I did 1, 2. We've got two. 2 games this weekend with a negative 50 million degree wind chill. I mean, it is less than 0. There's not a 2 degrees. We're playing a game in a 2 degrees. Now, look. I am based in the Southeast. This is an SEC channel. Most of you watching are probably based in the Southeast. And it would be elitist of us to say, well, tough it out. That's football weather. But we don't ever have to worry about that. We're in God's country. Unless, of course, you're in Mississippi. That's not God's country. But everywhere else, you're in God's country. Should a football game be played in 2-degree weather, negative 30-degree wind chill, in a snowstorm? I saw that there was Kansas City Chiefs playoff tickets on sale for $30. Okay. Now that doesn't include the ticket processing fee. So you would have to buy 2 tickets. So it'd be $60. Processing fee, $100. Probably a little more than that. Then you got to drive the gas. Okay. And you got to get the gas all the way out there. Then you got to pay for parking. Parking's going to be $30 or $40. You're probably going to want to get the best parking spot. So you got to have all the traffic that goes into actually getting to the game. If a car breaks down, that's going to be chaos. So you got all this crap you got to worry about. And you also got to eat. You can't. How are you going to eat? How are you going to enjoy some nachos with freaking Mother Nature putting her dandruff all over your food? And then on top of that, on top of all of that, okay, you could die. You can freaking die. I mean, that is just the God's honest truth. If you think you could go out in those temperatures and sit and watch a game for 3 hours, and by the way, everybody on the field's moving. Your ass is stationary. You're just sitting there asking for frostbite. You are Lloyd's tongue on the pole in Dumb and Dumber. Okay? That's how cold you're going to be. That is how cold it's going to get. You can die. And do you think emergency services are going to get too easy? Hell no. I mean, you would just freeze. And look, there's going to be some cocky sons of guns that are just going to go out there. Oh, I've been waiting to wear my 1993 starter jacket with 10 holes in it and mildew. And they're going to sit and think that's enough layers for 2-degree weather. Van says, I'm old enough to remember the Ice Bowl and Fran Tarkenton running between snowdrifts. 2-degree weather. 2. It's not Celsius. That is Fahrenheit. AP is interested in LSU going to get Isaiah Bond. Yeah, I mean, if they were to get him, he would be the best receiver on LSU's team. I mean, he's good. There's just no other way around it. It would either be him or Kyron. If I'm Isaiah Bond, why would I leave, though? I don't quite understand the portal from his standpoint. You are a freaking legend at Alabama. That is the place to be a legend. Now, I know what many would say. Well, Carter, yes. There's 1,000 legends. Isaiah Bond's not even a top 15 wide receiver in Alabama. And all of that is true. But it's Alabama. Okay, unless you're going to LSU or Ohio State, what better school is there to be a wide receiver? But if he wants to come to LSU, to quote Lemire, be my guest. I'm serious. Be my guest. You can go stay with my aunt in BR. She makes those lemony twang smoothies and some gumbo. Now, what I would say from an LSU perspective is the roster numbers are a little bit tighter. And that is for my LSU Discord. So we'll talk about it then. It is Power Hour SEC. Boom. And I think it was just made official that Grubb is the guy. Okay. Alabama owes Washington $12 million in buyout money. and then $10 million a year. Oh, crazy. Absolutely crazy. It's about to get wild, y'all. This conference, this sport, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. You can't beat it. There's no other forms of entertainment outside of Breaking Bad that comes close to this. We'll talk to you soon. Let's freaking go. And shout out to Dana Girl, top super chatter. Let's go.